Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm Zelf and today we are going to look at a aspect of Warframe where we try to make comparable multipliers so that we can decide on which modding should we go for and if it's better, if it's not. And today we're going to look at viral status chance. Now today is special because we've never done a sort of like an average damage for status effects before. I'm gonna start with viral because it's one of the more popular ones. The problem with this is that unlike critical that we did in the past few videos, there are a lot of conditions. For example, if you look at the one of the main condition is that the first proc gives 100% increase in damage, and then every subsequent proc is 25. And there's a limit, so it only stacks up to 10 times. That gives you 325% damage increase on the health. So there are all these conditions, and also it expires in 6 seconds. But I'm going to say right off the bat that we are not going to take that 6 seconds into account because it's just too confusing and it's just making the scenario really bad. So if we set our scenario as we are shooting constantly non-stop, then it by right it wouldn't expire, so the 6 second doesn't matter anyways. Now I've been thinking about how to get an average damage for things like viral damage for a really long time because of this unique proc, and I think I kind of came up with something and I'm going to share with you as I'm building. Also, I don't have much time to record including tomorrow because tomorrow I have to give lessons online and I have like 5 classes and each classes lasts about 1.5 to 2 hours. So I may not upload anything tomorrow, so maybe if possible I'll make this a little bit longer and then split it into 2 so that we have something to look at for tomorrow as well. It really depends how far we can go. So the first thing is we need to come up with a way to calculate that damage, but we need to decide how the proc works first. And one of the complications with using status chance is that, especially for viral, is that the position where it proc is very important. So let me give you an example. And I'm doing this for the first time as well, so hopefully everything goes fluently. So let's say this is the number of hits. I'm going to do something very similar to the one that I did for critical so that it's easy to digest and that you guys understand what I'm trying to go for. Okay, so let's say you do 10 damage each time. Now if you have a 20% chance of proccing, okay, I'm just going to put 20% over here so that we all know. Let's say it proc the first 2 times. Okay, so out of 10 hits, 2 is going to proc. Basically, in layman terms, that's what the 20% meant. So if it proc at the first 2, then it's going to buff all the damage of the others. And that is a lot more damage than if you are unlucky and it proc at the last 2. So you can see how the position of where or when does the viral proc occur will influence our results. And I've been struggling thinking how to make an average based on this for a really long time. And then I think I know what I can do. I can make it the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario and get the average between those. So let's say best case scenario is the first 2 that procs, right? And then the worst case scenario is when the last 2 that procs. So we're gonna find the damage that it could do when only the first 2 proc, and then after that we find the damage that it could do when the last 2 procs, and then we plus them together, divide by 2, and that is how I think I'm gonna go for to find the average damage. Now there is another issue. Something's going on with my windows. Now things gonna get even more confusing because there is a limit, sort of like a cap, because it can only proc up to 10 times and after that it doesn't stack anymore. So this means that there's a limit to it, and we can't really say that we have tested its full potential until it reached that limit. So we have to sort of like give it a number of tries or number of hits and say that, oh, this is enough because it could reach its limit. And this is where it gets really more difficult to do. So the first thing that I want you guys to understand is that, let's say these are, each one is 10 hits. So we have 100 hits over here, because 10 times 10, we get 100 hits. Now, if I were to proc 10 times in the first 10 hits, okay, and then I versus one that I proc 10 times in the second hit. So let's say this is fully procced. I'm gonna just assign a color to it, and the other one is at the end, right? And then I'm gonna assign a color to it. And then because this one has proc 10 times, this whole region has a buff, you know, because of the viral increasing the damage that you do to the enemy. So let's put a different color to it. I don't know, purple maybe. Nah, it's too close. Let me change the color a little bit. Put yellow. Okay, so now you can see that obviously the top one is a lot better because it's going to do a lot more damage than the lower one. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the damage later when we calculate all these, what are the values that's going to be, and then add them up and divide by 2. But I want you guys to see that at this point, when it goes, if it continues shooting, it's only going to be as high as it can be, which is 325%. And then as for this case, after this point, it's also going to be as high as it can be, which is again the 10 or whatever damage that you assign to times 325%. So in the long run, when this is expanded, like super far out, you can see that when it goes towards infinity, you can see that actually they both kind of end up being the same amount of damage. It's just the starting that gave that difference. But then if you keep adding and then you find the average, they actually tend to lean towards each other and become the same. So therefore, when you can finish proccing that 10 hit is what's important in these scenarios. Because otherwise, it's just pretty much comparing 325% damage increase versus some other multiplier. And it's just so much easier to do. The problem is we need to put into status chance into account. And status chance actually defines when you reach that 10 stack faster or slower. Okay, so the first case scenario would be the best case scenario, is that if you have 20% again, status chance, and you have, let's say you do 100 attacks, okay, 100 attacks, then the first 20 attacks will cost a proc. But again, you have to remember that it only stacks up to 10 times, so therefore the first 10 procs matters, and after that everything else doesn't really matter, but it has a fixed increase of 325%. So that is the best case scenario. So let's put in some dummy values so that we can actually see something now. So let's say our base damage is 100, okay, and then from the starting, which we do kind of need to calculate. So let's say if we are doing 100 damage the first time, and then it procs viral on the enemy, so the next hit is going to do how much? I'm actually not very sure which one applies first. Like when you proc a viral, does the viral straight away take into account, and then your initial damage, the one that you use to proc the viral, does it go up? From my experience, I feel like it doesn't. It comes next, so the second hit is the one that gets improved. I actually did a test with corrosive in the past, and corrosive works that way. Your initial hit does not take into account the armor reduction from the corrosive proc. So I'm just assuming here, so there might be a flaw here. I just want to make it clear that the viral proc will only take effect in the next hit. So if the first hit was just 100 and it procs, then the next hit is going to do double that because it has 100% 100% damage increase. So it's going to be 200. Or just to make it a little bit clearer, let's put this over here. So this is the damage done. I feel like I need to label them, otherwise it just gets really confusing. This is status chance. Okay, and maybe we should just separate them a little bit. Okay, and let's say that instead of just stays, okay, so over here we say damage increase in percentage. So here we have an extra 100%, so we're gonna put a 1, and then this one will be equals to the 100 times bracket the 1 plus 1. Okay, so you get 200. Now the next step, what's going to happen is that it's only going to increase by 25% according to wiki subsequent proc. So in this case, it's going to go up by 25%. And if we do this, you can see that 25% out of the 100, we're still using the 100. No, we're not. We're not using that 100. So we have to change that. Change this to this one. Oopsie. Delete. Put this one in. And we need to lock it down. Let me lock this one down as well. This one needs to be locked down. Okay, so by right, it's not right either. So this one needs to increase by 25% and then is added to this value. Oof, it's getting a little bit more confusing. And so this means that I should also change this to the similar sort of like built. So it would be plus to this value. Yikes, like that. Okay, so now we should be able to pull this, and then if the next one is going to increase by 25 again, right? Then the next one is going to increase by another 25 all the way until 10 stacks. So by right, will the number change? By right, it should have, so this is the first proc, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So you're actually gonna see the end result at the 11th hit. So one more. Okay, so long story short is that at the first 10 hits, or rather the first 11 hits, this is the outcome. With 100 damage, the first hit will give you an extra 100%. Then after every subsequent hit, it's going to give you an extra 25% based on the base, which is 100, and then it keeps add up until you get up to 425%. And anything after this is all going to be exactly the same, right? Because there's no more increase, it's stopped over here, it's capped. So basically, if you look over at the top, you see this yellow part. This is where the 400 something occurs. Actually from here onwards, they are all 425. So now what we need to do is we need to calculate what is the sum of damage done from this part, from all the way here, all the way just before it reached the 425 damage. Okay, so we are going to equal sum bracket, and you're going to know why I'm doing this in just a bit. Okay, close bracket, and the total damage that has been done in 10 hits in order to get it to its maximum is 2,800 damage. 2,800 damage. So what this means is that if I have a scenario like this, right? Like for example this one. Ignore the 10 damage over here, okay? Ignore whatever that 10 stands for. But what this means is that over here is going to be 2,800, and it's always going to be 2,800 as long as the base is 100 damage, and then everything else is going to be 425. And as for this one, is everything's going to be 100 damage until when I reach here, then you're going to have a 2,800, and then everything else is going to be 425. So that is what this whole reasoning of getting this is for. Okay, now we need to assign sort of like a range for it to reach 100. For it to proc 10 times at the beginning, with 20% status chance, how many hits do I need to do? And the answer is at least 50, right? Because 20% out of 50 is 10. So this means that let's say this is 10 hits, 10 hits, 10 hits, 10 hits, and 10 hits. So in total, we have 50 hits. This will be the 10 hit that is going to cause it to reach the 10 proc stack. I mean, so here we're gonna have 2,800 damage, and this one is 10 hits of 425. So that is going to be 10 hits, right? 4,250. And this is also going to be 4,250, 4,250, right? So this is how much damage I'll be doing in 50 hits, 50 hits. And the total damage is equals to, it's actually raining outside, so you might hear storm, equals to this much. Now what I need to do is, in order to find the average, I will need to take this value, okay, so equals to this value, divide by 50 hits. So I'm going to put 50 here, and my average damage done is 396. Okay, this is the best case scenario. The best case scenario, in order to get that 10 stack, you need to at least hit 50, and if so happen that the 10 stack occur in the first 10 shots, then everything else after that is going to be buffed, and then if you add everything up together divided by 50 hits, you're going to get an average of 396. Now we're going to look at the worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, same thing, at 20% status chance, the status proc will be at the end of the situation. So again, if this is 10 hit, 10 hit, 10 hit, 10 hit, so at first it's just going to be your base, which is 100 damage times with 10. So it's going to do 1,000 damage, and then another 1,000 damage, another 1,000 damage, and until the 5th, or from the 41st hit, it's going to start to crank up like that, right? It's going to start to go up like this. So we already calculated that this is going to give you 2,800 damage. Okay, so what we need to do now is equal sum, and we're gonna take these value, close, and then now we find the average equals this one, divide by 50. Okay, and what you get is, at worst case scenario, your average damage is going to be 136 only. Now, if I were to continue and expand, let's say to the 50,000 hits, okay, and with 20% critical chance, with 20% status chance, it's still going to reach roughly about 10 hits in 50 hits. Okay, I mean 10 stacks in 50 hits. So this means that after that, everything beyond is going to be 425. When that is the case and you add up everything together, these two values become really close to 425, which is why when it comes to status like viral, it's very important to judge based on the starting and how soon you can start proccing. Okay, so now in order for us to get the average, we need to add the best case scenario, which is 396, divide by plus 100. I'm just gonna do it over here, equals to this one plus this one. We need to put a bracket because we then have to divide them by 2, and this is our average damage for viral in a situation where you do 100 damage and you have 20% status chance. Now, because our damage is exactly 100, we can actually use this as a percentage for us to see. So what this means is that with just 20% status chance, we can actually do about, with viral at least, we can actually do about an extra 166% damage. Okay, now I'm going to do a second case. We're gonna rank up or increase the percentage and see what kind of results we get. So let's say now we play with, I don't know, 50% status chance. Okay, 50% is a lot. So if it has 50% status chance, then this means that half the time you will be doing a proc. So in order for you to get at least that 10 procs, you only need to shoot about or attack about 20 times. Does that make sense? So 10 of it is going to be proccing the status. So we have a 10 here, and then we have another 10 here. Okay, so the first 10 is going to do, we have already calculated, 2,800. And then this is the best case scenario. And then the later 10 is going to be 4,250. All right. And then now we're going to look at worst case scenario. So worst case scenario is that the first 10 hits does not proc. So when you do 1,000 damage, and then after that you do that 2,800 damage. Okay. And then now we are going to add them up. Equal sum. Add these two up. Okay. And then we're going to do the same for this as well. Actually, I think I can just drag it in, delete this. Oof. Right. And then we're going to find the average equals to this one. Divide by, in this case, we only have 20. So we're going to put 20. And this one will be equals to this one. Divided by, again, 20. Okay. So this is the average damage over here. And this is the average damage over there. And we are going to find what is the overall average. So now you see a different value, and it's better than the one before, because obviously with higher status chance, you kind of reach the cap sooner. So therefore you have a better average. But we actually cannot compare between these two just like that, because this one we take a sample size of 50 and this one only at 20. So what we can do is, in order to compare between these two, we can actually increase it by up to 50. So this one, we're going to increase. We're going to put another 10 hit, another 10 hit, another 10 hit, so that it does a total of 50 hits. And we already know that after this point, every single thing is going to be doing 4,250 damage, right? So we're going to just drag this over here. And also again, after this point, it's also going to be 4,250 damage. Okay, and we're going to drag this over here. And then now our new sum has changed. Let's see if I can just, nope. How do I, nope. Maybe I have to delete it first. I actually don't know how to edit that. Okay. And then for this, we will put this in. Okay. And instead of dividing by 20, we now need to make sure we divide it by 50. Okay, divide by 50. And there. So basically what these value kind of tells you is that for 50 hits, the average of damage that you do with 20% viral chance, you are going to do about 266, which is an increment of your base by 166%. What else, if you have 50% status chance on viral, and then you're actually going to get a buff after 50 hits, that on average you'll be doing an extra 263.5%. Now again, if I were to take more sample size and I go up to like 100 hits, these two values is going to get closer and closer to 425, which is not something that I want. And we have to take the one that has the lowest one, because if you do not hit 50 times, the 20% critical, the 20% status chance might not allow you to proc at least 10 times. So therefore 50 has to be the minimum. It has to follow the one with the lowest status chance percentage. And therefore you can compare and you can see that, oh, by adding it or by increasing it up to 50% status chance, you actually increase its effectiveness, I guess you can say, or damage by an extra, I guess you can just straight say, by an extra 100% ish, but not multiplied, the additional 100% increase. So just a quick summary, the things that you need to wrap your head around is the way I find average okay with you? Is it okay that I put the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario and add them up divided by 2? Do you think that will work for you? Another thing is that the number of hits. What do you think about that number of hits? For me, I feel like it has to be assigned with the lowest critical chance. So if it's 20%, it has to be at least 50 shots. Otherwise, it will not reach its full potential. Because if you're comparing with something that has reached its full potential versus something that has not reached its full potential, it's kind of unfair. This is why you kind of have to follow the one with the lowest status chance. So at this case, 50 hits is when most likely that 20% is going to be able to proc at least 10 times to reach its full potential. And based off everything, we actually could kind of compare between two different percentage, one at 20%, one at 50%, and we can already see how much damage multiplier it has increased based on just changing the status chance. And I hope that this all kind of makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know down in the comments. It's very important, especially if you are mathematically inclined, so that I can know your input about it, and should I continue on and do it further this way, or should I find a different alternative, or if you have a different alternative to share with me that I feel like is better, maybe you can do that so that we can get our future projects more accurate. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. My brain hurts.